morning. This morning at EMA, we're going to talk about DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very, very important topic, and something that we want to basically share. What we as EMA are now starting to do, and how we're thinking about this. I would make the assumption that as you all work for major companies, I'm sure that you probably do have DEI statements within your businesses. The question is, do you know those statements, and how are you implementing them into your role and into your events? As part of my role as chair of EMA, I sit on the board of the BVEP, which is the British Visits and Events Partnerships. We've done a couple of sessions with those, and that encompasses over 20 industry associations related to the events industry associations, from people who bring on concerts, big congresses, conferences, etc. And as the BVEP, those guys talk to government on behalf of the broader industry through the DTI. Following the incident earlier last year, specifically around racism and the killing of George North and the BLM movement, as BVEP, we asked ourselves the question: what is our industry doing, the events industry, and what can we do? And from that, so fast forward from that discussion earlier last year, EMA has signed up to the BVEP statement on DEI, and we as a group, as a council, as our board, are committed to driving awareness, understanding, and action through our sector. We've created a working group within EMA, chaired by EMA member Mei Chung from FTI Consulting, and this is basically our kickoff meeting. We have a great panel to discuss some of their thoughts, some of their lessons, some of their recommendations, and we'll talk more about the sort of the roadmap over the next few months of what we look to do and everything else. But I'm just going to quickly touch on the introductions. We've got Amy Kemp from DICE. DICE is a movement that Amy set up, which is very much to drive diversity in conferences and events. Donna Appley from London and Partners, and one of our EMA DEI members, and as a Black person is passionate about helping drive greater understanding and equity in our industry. Marnie Smith from Purple Goat, who consult on marketing and inclusion for disability and access. And Maria Gaez from IMEX. I think everyone knows IMEX, the big exhibition conference that's on every year, both in Frankfurt and Los Angeles, LA, Vegas, sorry, not LA, where she spearheads the internal working group and strategy on DEI. So Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Richard. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the kickoff session. So before we start, shall we do a quick poll? Now, this is confidential, but it would be good just to see what your wanted to find out how many of you have a company DEI statement. Bear with me whilst I just launch the poll. And if you can reply, that's great. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, so it looks like quite a lot of you have got a DEI statement, which is great news. Really, really good. We have got another one. Bear with me one second. And this one is if you actively include your DEI in your event planning. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Can everyone see the results? Hopefully you can. Some of them, well, most of you do, so that's great. Okay, and here are the results. Brilliant. Right, so my name is May, and as Richard said, I work at FTI Consulting as the EMEA Head of Events, a global management consultancy firm, leading on our large-scale events for the company for both internal and external clients. Now, I've worked in the events industry for more than 20 years and have seen how the industry has changed from technology to your marketing to audience engagement and experiences, etc. But the one thing that has been at the forefront for far too many years that haven't really changed is DEI. So my experience in working the events industry has always been predominantly white, with very little diversity in senior management. And during my 20-year career history, I have often been the only Chinese person employed in an events agency, and yeah, or even in the events team. So, and I guess what's frustrated me is that it's taken the death of George Floyd to reignite the dialogue and the push for sustainable change. So when EMA started the DEI committee, I wanted to be part of something that can and hopefully make a positive change in the events industry that is long overdue. So the EMA Diversity and Inclusion Committee is made up of a few volunteered members, and obviously we support what Richard has said earlier, the BVEP's statement. It is led by two co-chairs, myself and Louise Dempsey from Media Trust. Now, the committee is in its early stages, but what we aim to do in the long term is to raise awareness of issues and challenges, to develop, well, practical guidelines and I guess advise on how to implement change for our members' working day and environment. So right now, we are focused on getting a strategy together and what our objectives are. So we have been looking at 7 pillars of inclusion, which can hopefully act as our verticals. So for those who don't know what the 7 pillars of inclusions are, these are access, attitude, choice, partnerships, communication, policy, opportunities. And just very quickly, this was developed by Peter Downs in a project commissioned by an organisation called Play by the Rules. And his goal was to identify and define these common factors that influenced inclusion, regardless of who the target participants were. So this is now used as a broad framework to address inclusion and diversity. So without further ado, let's kickstart the conversation. So I would like to formally introduce a panel, and if we could have each of the panelists to just say who you are and why you've got involved with DEI, that'd be great. So shall we start with Donna?
Hi, my name is Donna Aberley. I'm the corporate events manager for London Partners. I've worked in the industry for over 20 years, and I've always been very passionate about diversity, inclusion and equity, really from a moral point of view rather than a business one. I just think it's the right thing to do. And from that perspective, whilst I'm female and I'm obviously a woman of colour, I also feel a broad sense of responsibility for all peoples from all different types of situations, which can be quite difficult sometimes because, you know, you're not from that situation. So it's a learning thing. So that's why it's important to me.
May, you need to unmute. May.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Donna. And Marnie from Purple Goat.
here.
Man,
Can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you now, yeah.
Hi, I'm Marnie. I am a disabled freelance researcher, and I also and I work a lot for Purple Goat, who are a inclusive marketing and research agency who are partly owned and run by disabled people, and their aim is to make sure our community is represented in terms of marketing and research. Being disabled myself is what drove me to get involved in DEI. I've got first-hand experience of when situations work well and when situations don't work well, and how that can make someone feel. And I kind of just echo what am I too far away from the mic? Is that better? Yeah. Just kind of echo what Donna says, in that I'm passionate for DEI for everyone, not just disabled people, but obviously my first-hand knowledge lies in disabled people, but I like to listen and learn from people from other minorities as well, in order to try and help them.
Thank you, Marnie. And Amy.
Hi everyone, can you see me? Because my Wi-Fi is a little bit dodgy this morning.
Yeah.
There's always one, isn't there? You can see me fine?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
Lovely. Hello everybody. My name's Amy. I'm an advertiser by trade, so I've worked in marketing for about 16 years, but I'm also co-founder of DICE, which stands for Diversity and Inclusion at Conferences and Events. And it's kind of like a self-regulatory framework for the events industry, an educational tool and a process of certification that helps events organisers plan inclusive events. And the reason why we created it, first of all, I just got sick over the years of being the token woman. At the last minute, kind of pulled onto a program so that the events organisers could boost the female numbers. But secondly, we have a tangible goal. We want to eradicate the manel, which is the all-male panel, and the WANL, all male white panel, and our goal was to eradicate it by 2021, and I haven't seen any this year. So I think we've done it.
Thank you. And Maria.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me today. So I'm Maria Galles. I work for IMEX Group. I work on the hosted buyer team, but I am also leading the diversity and inclusion squad at IMEX. And for me, it's you know, I just echo what both Marnie and Donna said. I feel like DEI is just the right thing to do. I love people. I'm a people person. I love learning about other people and hearing their experiences. And the concept of belonging is very important to me. I traveled a lot as a kid, so that's kind of just, I hold that close to my heart. And I really want to help amplify the voices of people that are underrepresented, because they deserve to have a voice. So I feel strongly about that.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. So let's open up the discussion and talk more about that. Does anyone want to share a life experience, either their own or someone else's, to help us visualize the need for greater DEI understanding? Perhaps Marnie and Donna, can you share your story with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me again? Is my mic working?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, honestly, this laptop. Yeah. So growing up, for me, I never saw anyone like me in any form of media, on anything. Growing up watching TV shows, there was never anyone like me, and I think it makes it a bit difficult, because you're like, well, I want to succeed as well, and I want to be able to, but can I? Because no one else like me has. And then as I got a bit older, I started seeing more people. So like now, when you look at people like Tanya Gray Thompson and Baroness Jane Campbell, and you've got people to look up to, and it just kind of gives you that reassurance that you can achieve and that you can do what you want to do. And I think that's why representation is so important, because it lets, thinking back to me being like a little girl, it would have, if I'd have seen someone like me, I would have thought I can achieve, and not that it ever stopped me, it probably helped make me determined to prove that I can achieve, but it would have just given that reassurance growing up that it will be okay.
Thank you. Donna? What are your thoughts on this?
Where do I start? Big subject.
It is, yeah.
Some of you would have seen that last year, obviously, I started up the group specifically looking at the fallout from George Floyd and the issues regarding race and ethnicity, not just here in the UK, but globally. I'm fortunate enough to work for the Mayor's office. We currently have in London a very diverse community, but a mayor who is also very stringent about those things. So whilst I'm very passionate, my job lends itself that I have to be very passionate about it, and we have very strict criteria that we have to fulfill. However, there's always more to do, and I think that's the key thing for me. It's very easy to tick a box. I've got a diversity policy. Tick a box. We've got a speaker on the panel. Tick a box. We've done this. And I'd like to get away from a tick box situation where it becomes naturally ingrained in our psyche, which is a little bit harder to do. It involves me closing my mouth, which is always very difficult, and opening my ears and listening to other people's experiences and understanding things from a different point of view, which is always quite difficult and sometimes can cost a little bit more money and time. And, you know, I'm skint and I'm lazy, so sometimes I don't always do those things. And I think, you know, that for me is why it's really important, because we're talking about individual people. It's not just about the speakers, it's about the audiences. It's not about just the audiences, it's about the subject matter, what we talk about in those conferences, in those meetings. So it's a big subject. And now I will shut up.
That's okay. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Donna. And like you said, it is a very, very big subject. I mean, where do we start? You know, you talk about race, you know, how tall you are, how big you are, you know, whatever it is, where do we start? So I guess the next question is, you know, because of this, and, you know, it is a big discussion and we do need to dig deeper. And as we peel back the layers on DEI, you know, it's an easy option to just slam the lid shut and say, right, that's it. I don't want to really talk about it because either I don't know much about it or I'm embarrassed, I don't want to share. You know, so there's all these questions, and you know, I guess my question is, you know, well, how do we start? You know, what are, you know, from you, Amy, perhaps, you know, what advice can you share with us about, you know, how do we start this DEI discussion? I mean, especially for the EMA DEI committee, you know, we're still in its infancy stages, and, you know, we're still putting together what is it that we want to achieve, but there's just so many, you know, subgroups.
Yeah.
So yeah, over to you.
So what I would say is, and I think this is where a lot of people fall down, start with a goal. start with some benchmarking, start with something tangible that you want to achieve, because I feel like, you know, I've seen this a lot in the advertising industry. In advertising, we're bloody good at talking, not that great at acting. So there's lots of initiatives, open letters, plans, councils, but no one's measuring their improvement. And can I give you an example? Of where it's been done badly, and then I'll kind of give you a positive at the end.
Yeah, please do.
In 2016, there's an organisation called the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. 2016 was a leap year, and they created a big initiative. They built a microsite. There was loads of money put behind it, loads of PR, called Take the Leap. And Take the Leap was about getting more Black and Asian people into their advertising industry, but it was also about reducing the gender pay gap. So they got thousands of agencies all over the country to sign up to this initiative. There was so much kind of hyperbole around it, loads of praise. Well done, well done. 4 years later, so at the beginning of last year, they very quietly released the results, you know, the progress that had been made over 4 years, the amount of Black and Asian people in our industry had gone down and the gender pay gap had gone up, because people were so focused on the PR and the conversation and the initiative and the microsite that they forgot they actually had a job to do. And that's why I think sometimes we just really need to be focused on the numbers. When we created DICE, we decided to be really unemotional and base it on the law. So DICE is, it was kind of entirely based on the 2010 Equality Act, which has 9 protected characteristics where it's actually illegal to discriminate against people. So you should include them in your event. So based on race, gender, disability, age, religion, etc. And if you start with the facts, and if you start with the unemotional stuff, and if you assign some numbers to it, then I think you're on the right track.
That's great, thank you. And Maria, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure, of course. I think, you know, the journey for IMEX kind of started with when they created a She Means Business in 2018. So that was all kind of the educational program about female empowerment, gender equality. And then at the end of that year, coincidentally, when I started at IMEX, a group of employees put together a DEI squad. And I was very happy to join that when I joined IMEX. And, you know, we started small. That is what my advice would be, is we, you know, it started as a safe space, just kind of having conversations, raising awareness. And then, yeah, from that to now, we have created a 5-year strategy plan where we clearly put what is the purpose of the squad, what's our scope, what are our aims. And from that 5-year strategy plan, we're now working on the yearly action plan. Because I echo what you were saying, it is massive. There's, you know, disability, race, gender, sexual orientation. There's just so much to cover. So my advice would always be to start small, because it can be super, super overwhelming. And yeah, I think that I agree with what Amy was saying, having a goal. So kind of getting that strategy in place and just taking those small steps can really lead you to start taking action and actually walk the talk.
Thank you. Thank you. So what do you...
Can I jump in with a sort of comment and question?
Yeah.
This is a personal thing, but whilst I'm passionate, so I like what Donna said about, you know, coming from within and passionate about making this change on behalf of, you know, myself and EMA, of course. I have big feet. I'm clumsy. I get things wrong. I got George's name wrong at the beginning of this. I mean, shoot me. I'll see when I say that's the wrong thing to say. Oh God. But learning and embarrassment. And that's, I think a lot of people are really challenged with that, about what do I do? How do I address, how do I approach this? Sorry, I've done it again. Any thoughts? Amy, you're good at this.
I'm happy.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Amy. Go. Okay, thank you. Bless you. No, I totally get. I just wanted to say I completely understand that. You know, and one thing we did at IMEX, one of our easy wins we did at the squad, is we created an inclusive language guide, and we just researched this. We just went online. You know, Google is your friend, and you know, there's so much out there. You can follow loads of activists on LinkedIn. There's loads of diversity and inclusion groups. I would say look at the, you know, all the organizations, different charities regarding all the different identity groups, and they have so many resource hubs. And so from that we created an inclusive language guide, because that is so key. And you know, I've made so many mistakes. I still sometimes make mistakes, and I think it's just about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, you know, just like you said, Richard, you've just said it so humbly, like, I've made a mistake, you know, I'm sorry, I'll try again. And I think that's what it's about, at least trying to have those conversations instead of just saying, oh, I'm just not going to say anything because it's, what if I mess up? You know, I think in general, people are kind, you know, and people, if you just come from a place of, I'm learning, I'm sorry, I'll try that again. I think, you know, that can really make a big difference.
That's so true. Yeah. Thank you. Richard, did you want to say any more?
Oh, no, that's great. I think that whole thing about sort of, you know, just not being embarrassed. Just if it comes out wrong, it comes out wrong.
Yeah.
But people understand, the embarrassment or whatever. As long as they're not going back to say, no, you can't say that. I mean, that's one of the things that annoys me. You can't say
well, it's all part of the learning, isn't it? We're always learning. We're always, discovering, well, what else can we learn out there, and teach each other, kindness, whatever, knowledge sharing. So on that, what and going back to the panelists, what do you feel are the things that we can learn from as event professionals, to drive change in our business, for our events? So yeah, what do you think you feel are the important things that we should concentrate on? This is open to anyone who wants to contribute to this question. Yeah, okay. Amy?
I've just got a quick one, and it's related to a question that you asked at the beginning. So one of the, the DEIS, the way that DEIS works is it's a 10-point charter that covers all the different protected characteristics of the Equality Act. And it covers a lineup of an event, it covers the content, and it covers the marketing and the audience as well, because you want to make sure that you're getting a diverse audience and you're making the audience feel included. And then events organisers can submit their work and we certify them. What happened a lot last year is I'd get events organisers coming to me 2 weeks before the event saying, shit, we're not diverse. And I'd be like, oh, for God's sake, okay, I'll help you for free then. So what we're saying instead, which is far better, is plan DEIS from day one. If you craft your agenda thinking about how you can make it inclusive, it's a better event. It's more interesting. It's fresher. You have, more challenging voices. Everyone that we've worked with that's planned with diversity from day one has said they've had amazing conversations during the journey, and the event has been brilliant. So the results kind of speak for themselves, I think.
Now, if I could just jump in and say to everybody that's out there listening in or part of this, please use the chat block. You've all got ideas and everything else. And whilst these guys are discussing, simple ideas and perhaps quick wins of what we could be doing, please chuck them in there so we can capture them to help the DEI committee go forward. Cheers.
So I've got a few quick wins because I have to do things quickly. So the first thing is, as Amy said, is to split things up. So you think about your content, you think about who's working on the event. Some things take a longer time is you can't suddenly just eradicate your team. You can't just suddenly change the structure of your team or your actual company, but you can change perhaps the supply chain that you use. You can change perhaps the content delivery. If you can't find a female speaker because, quite frankly, there are no females who are at a particular level, bring it into the discussion. Question it. Because one of the things that happens is we suddenly put someone on the panel, like somebody who has got a disability, and suddenly disability, we've ticked that box and we don't have to talk about it anymore. Well, hold on a second, you put me on a panel, but it doesn't mean to say you fix the problem in the industry. We still need to bring up the subject matter. So there are different ways of doing it. And if you put those into boxes and you say, well, which ones can I do? And you say, okay, well, we've got how our company is structured. That's one thing. How we behave within our company. It's not just about how we're structured. Where are those people? Do we make them feel comfortable? Or are they all sitting together in one little group at lunchtime? Or are we actually making them feel like if they're part of the company? That's one part. Those are big things. They take a long time to fix. But the quick wins are the little events that we're doing. Well, they're not little, are they? But, the big events that we're doing. And certainly now that we're working in a virtual spectrum, there are other key aspects which I'm sure that Marnie will be able to elaborate a lot more on, with how we can make this actual platform more inclusive. For example, if one of you had a hearing disability, would we know about that? Had we asked the question before you signed up? Did we offer any systems that would allow you to feel more included in this conversation? Perhaps you suffer with some, I don't know, learning impediments, makes it much more difficult for you to type into the chat. So how would you be able to engage with us? That sort of thing. Perhaps you feel very, very conscious about your visual, how you look. Well, do you really want to turn your camera on? I've had to go and slap my face with a lot of makeup this morning to make myself look half decent. So, but I may not have a scar on my face. that makes me feel very subconscious. Usually I'm behind the scenes and suddenly I'm in this committee with my peers, but I'm someone who always wears a blacks and runs around in the background and no one really sees me, and I feel much more comfortable with that. So I think those are the things that you can look at that are the quick wins. And now I will close my, be quiet.
Yeah, and if I can just kind of elaborate on what Donna says, is ask. Don't be scared of asking people, because that's never a negative thing. Like, if you don't know, ask. Don't just hide away, because people aren't going to look badly on you because you didn't know. Like, that's fine. And actually, it's a positive that you've asked and you want to learn. And that's absolutely great. And like Donna was saying, with these virtual platforms, is things like subtitles or captioning and live ones that come up. Now, not every platform offers them easily, but there is platforms that do. And although some platforms, some people prefer than others, at the end of the day, it needs to be as accessible as possible. And also things like screen sharing. If you've got someone who's visually impaired and uses a screen reader, if someone was to share a PowerPoint screen onto this meeting right now, the screen reader would not pick that up. They would only pick it up as an image. So then you would have someone who has no idea what's going on, because all their screen reader would say would be Marnie Smythe, Purple Go, share screen. They would not see what the PowerPoint was saying. They would not know when a PowerPoint had changed. So it's about also asking and sending things over in advance if people ask, and to also make sure if someone specifically asks for it in a certain format, so whether that's Word or PowerPoint, that is listened to as well, because often, again, with screen readers and PDFs, they don't read them properly. They read them up and down rather than left to right. So then it doesn't make any sense to the person who's using the screen reader. So it's about asking and listening. That's really important.
Thank you. That is very important. I've got some questions or comments from the chat. Someone saying, I have seen a company that tells something about job applicants, not to include their information such as nationality, name, address, education, etc. in their CVs. I think it's a very good idea for diversity. Any comments on that about talent?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? That's one of those, that's not a low-hanging fruit, changing the talent that comes into your company, that's for certain. But I think it's a good idea to have training available for people who are actually recruiting. It's far deeper than that. At some point, you are going to have to know that person's name. And so when you do not find that name, you want to make sure you're not prejudging them based on their name. So whether or not the name is on the CV or whether the name is actually given to you at a later stage, really the issue is, are you prejudging? We often hear about unconscious bias training, but I mean, let's go beyond that, please. It's just like a buzzword that a lot of people are doing at the moment. But, it is about that learning ability. By not having the education, well, that maybe in the events industry that might be relevant, because quite frankly, you don't have to have a degree in order to do any of our roles, although they are a benefit. But if that's your way of showcasing who you are, you shouldn't feel that you shouldn't have to put it on there. So you haven't got any real life experience of doing events, then your experience is your degree. That's really important for you to showcase that. But what you want to stop is people demanding that you have to have a degree or go to a particular university or live by a particular postcode. Certainly, they shouldn't be putting their address on there, because there's no reason for me to know the address. HR need to know the address and their contact details. Your date of birth is a similar thing. That should be stripped off. It's that kind of stuff. But I think that kind of training, you can do that, but at some point you're still going to be in that room with that person. And you're going to meet that person. You're going to know that that person is older. You're going to know that. So at some point, you want to get rid of those biases that are there. And that starts way beyond the CV. So it's a good starting point, but it's not the whole story. And I think you have to look at the whole process and a company, and this is where it starts to get why it's not low-hanging fruit. A company needs to do that across all of their sectors. Oh, hello. Was that me? Have I become a schizophrenic or
Sure.
something? Say hello, good morning to everybody twice. Right. Okay. No, but that's what I would say. And it is hard. Believe me, I'm not a recruiter. I had to do it quite a number of times when I've been at London and Partners, and it is a skill that you learn and you have to practice your way out of it. You know, I think one of the key things for me was actually people who have are on the spectrum for dyslexia or dyspraxia. Now, of course, you look at a CV, and one of the key things for me is spelling. But I had to learn that I can't judge somebody on their spelling. How difficult is that? That's really hard for somebody who has to proofread and stuff. It's like, well, hold on a second, that's what we're doing in a job. Like, no, you can't. Unconscious bias. You need to make sure you're being inclusive because that person may have that situation. So therefore, it's about digging deeper. So that's what I would say on that comment.
It's quite interesting what you were saying, Donna, about unconscious bias training, and also the box ticket. You know, we're in this kind of weird phase where we're all ticking boxes, because I know that last summer it was a real knee-jerk reaction, wasn't it, for every organisation to do unconscious bias training. We've done it. Now we know everything. And I feel like maybe I've seen a lot of research suggesting that sometimes diversity initiatives can actually make things worse in an organization because they provide like a smoke and mirrors kind of illusion of stuff being done, rather than progress actually being made, which I thought was quite interesting.
That's true. Instead of just doing lip service,
you
have to be actually doing the actions to make a difference. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I joined an agency, and there was only 3 BAME people there, and the organisation thought it would be a good idea to set up like a D&I club. It was almost like they did it just to show, oh yeah, we're diverse thing. And what ended up was just a club with no actions, nothing to benefit us at all, and actually probably singled us out even more, you know, from an ethnic minority. So yeah, it's important to really follow up the actions.
Let me jump in and ask a question. Let's say, okay, right, I'm one of our event planners that's out there. I like this idea. I should make more of an effort of this. Where do I find Black disabled speakers without having to spend lots and lots of time hunting for them? Is there an agency that specializes in them? You know, if I want to find an economist on this, or an PD on it, yeah, whatever. Yeah, go Don.
So I would say it doesn't start with being a Black disabled speaker. What is your subject matter about? So if I'm talking about dentistry, I want to find the best people in dentistry. I go to the Dentist Association to find out the best people. Say, do you happen to have anybody who is from that sector? It's not about setting up a platform that has a list of Black people and saying we're going to just choose somebody off of that list and say we're going to have them on a panel. And I also think it's very important to identify that sometimes you may not be able to find somebody in that group who is the person who should be on the panel. That is nothing wrong with that. Yeah. What is wrong is when you don't talk about it. What I would love to see more is where you have maybe a panel of people who sit within the majority in that group. And let's not face it, you know, you could be looking at nursery nursing and it would all be female. And if you're a male nursery nurse, you would be the minority. So this can be flipped the other way. But if we look at the majority of the sectors that we're looking at now, let's say it's banking and you've got an all male panel of middle-aged white men, how about bringing that topic into the discussion of what it is that they're sitting around the table and talking about? And in that way, you can try to instigate change. Does that make sense? So for me, if I'm looking at the event sector, if we look at our sector, I wouldn't want to see a glossary that puts a little stamp next to me and says, oh, I'm a Black person, you can hire me out to go and speak somewhere. It's more about, am I the right person? And actually, do I have that expertise? Because there's millions of us out there. We're not hiding anywhere, you know. And certainly if you are, yes, and as Priya says, also we need to avoid tokenism, just having, it's my biggest bugbear. And you know, I have to say this with an element of confidentiality as well, is obviously that the Mayor of London, we have to have diversity. We cannot have a panel which has got all men on it. We cannot have a panel where he's the only person who is of colour. And a lot of that is to do with PR. So obviously, if he's taking a picture, you imagine the furore if he has a picture where everybody in that picture is a white male and he's the black male in that panel. It's part of that is a remit that we have. So it's not even a question for me. And it does get to the point, Amy, where sometimes we're like, we haven't got enough. The person's pulled out. What are we going to do? You know, you can have a moderator. How about that? You don't have to have the speaker. The moderator could be somebody, you know? So that would be my answer to it. And that would be my advice to anybody who is perhaps working in the sector where they're thinking, I'm never going to be able to find somebody in that group.
Yeah, also if you're using a search, you know, an agency, a booking agency for that, you just make it very clear that yes, you're interested in the best, but you also want to see people of diverse backgrounds being put forward. So you push them to make that effort to do that research for you, because they're, you know, sometimes if you're using an agency, they'll go out, the people that have registered on their site and everything else, they'll give you the easy option. Whereas if you ask the question, like you do with your supply chain, if you ask them to make that extra effort, then you know, they will bring people forward.
Richard, I'm very conscious of time, and we haven't even taken any Q&A from our members. So shall we open up the floor? Just see if anyone's got any questions for the panelists. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, you know, you can either, if anyone's wants to put their hand up, please do, or put something in the chat space and we can ask it to the panel. Yeah, while you're there, whilst waiting, I mean, I would ask the panel questions. That's what I'm kind of doing, is jumping in, asking people questions, and taking them from the chat box.
I would just have a question in general, so not just related to the events industry. Are you pleased to see the sort of diversity that's coming through in things like magazines? And for me, it feels like a lot more things are becoming inclusive rather than exclusive. So do you see that as do you see the good things happening around that?
Marnie?
Yeah, my short answer is yes. I think, as I said in my little introduction, growing up, there wasn't people like me in any form of media, really. So to see now that across all kinds of media events and sectors that disabled people are being represented, I think it's a really positive thing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I work in advertising, and I think the progress that's been made in the last 12 months in terms of better representation, and you know, even stuff like the idea of what the perfect family is in adverts, seeing same couple families in ads, like over the last 12 months, so much stuff has changed. And I get so annoyed with the advertising industry. I always think it's so stereotypical and cliched, but I feel like real progress has happened recently.
You've got a question coming in from Ray. What are your thoughts on exclusion from inclusion? Good one. Who wants to take that one on?
Could you elaborate? I don't know what that quite means. Sorry.
Yeah, certainly. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you, Ray.
Yeah. So it really just so I'm on the DEI committee for Aberdeen Standard. We try and make sure that it's fair for everyone. So there's a lot of white males, pale, stale males, as we're often referred to, that feel they are becoming excluded from conversation, excluded from, you know, participating in certain events, because we need to make sure that, you know, there is that inclusion. But how do we make sure that people don't feel excluded in the same way as including, you know, cross diversity across everything that we do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Does anybody want to address that?
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly hear that at my sort of tennis club and things like that, as you know, simple things, when you know, conversations that I've had around, you know, like Black Lives Matter, and it would get thrown back, every life matters and blah blah, you know. It's
Morning,
like,
darling.
Yeah, well, guys, it's not. This is not about. And the analogy I like to sort of talk about that is when someone goes on about save the whales, they're not going, you know, fuck the dolphins or any other fish and everything else. It's just there's the focus on this area. That you know, we do hear that, and I think it's just about people saying, you know, what we kind of need to do, isn't it? Is I'm guessing is we need to forget about the color of someone's skin, their disabilities. That we are all equal. So, like you say, Donna, it's about the capabilities of those people.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I totally agree. And what we've tried to do is sort of show, you know, we show screenshots of events and panels, and it just shows 12 white men, right? And this is how we try and get it across, that the reason we're trying to do this stuff is to make that panel look different. You know, it does all look sound, try and show that gender pay gap to everybody. So that's the way we're trying to push it within the company. But there is definitely, you know, I do get emails from white males saying, I feel excluded from this. You know, what is the DEI committee trying to achieve here?
I would say that there are two elements. There's the audience, you know, and there's the speakers. And, you know, their contribution could be just as valid as an audience participation, roundtables, moderating, as it can be given centre stage. And it's just like if you have a big team and you want to give your middle managers or your junior managers the opportunity to grow and develop in their careers, you sometimes allow them to step up and present at a meeting where normally the director might be the person, or if you're going to pitch to a client, sometimes you let a junior manager go and pitch to the client rather than the senior manager do it. It gives them the opportunity to grow and develop and to give them centre stage. And it's an equal footing. I do recall there's a great HR champion. Oh gosh, what's her name? Cherie Davis, Cherie somebody. She's on LinkedIn. She does like a blog since the day that George Floyd was murdered. Shireen Daniels, thank you very much, Priya. Shireen Daniels. And what she said was very, very apt. If there are 10 seats at the table, at your dining table, you can only have 10 guests, right? You got to pick. You got to make a choice. I mean, somebody has to actually get off the table. And it is a really hard thing for people to do. If the table's always been filled with white male men who are middle class, who've gone to Oxford and Cambridge, and suddenly you've got to step down and let somebody else come onto that table, somebody does have to step down. Now you'll see some companies will create new positions on the table, but those positions are like, we go back to the tokenism, they're not positions that have been done there for a strategic reason. They've been put there just to give somebody a space on the table, but then they don't get a voice. And that's where we get to the E bit of DEI. They've been included, but they're not equal. So I think it's a process and it's not nice. Sometimes we have to relinquish things and give up things. We've all had to barricade ourselves in our houses for the past year. It hasn't been nice, but we've had to sacrifice that for the greater good of saving someone else's life. Well, this is for the greater good of, go back to that moral thing. We need to share that opportunity. You know, imagine if Marnie wasn't here, how different the conversation would be. Would we have considered some of the things that Marnie has to go through in her day-to-day life?
Amy, I think you wanted to add something there. You're on mute. Yeah.
I just wanted to applaud at that answer. It was perfect. I find that question, I mean, I might be a little less diplomatic. I find that question really difficult because when we launched DICE, we have a statement in DICE that no event, if you want to be certified, no event should have more than 50% men. And I personally received a lot of backlash from white men calling me sexist. And so I've dealt with this quite a lot of, you know, nasty WhatsApps and people shouting me down on social media. And I think it's not about now, first of all, now is not the time for fragility, and now is not the time for defensiveness when so much progress is being made. But also exactly what Donna was saying, this isn't about excluding anyone, it's just about leveling the playing field. And there's that quote, isn't it, to the privileged, equality feels like oppression.
Yeah, that's a great, I like that one.
Yeah, great line.
Yeah.
Right, well, I'm very conscious that we are running out of time, and we've all got our day jobs to go to. So thank you very, very much to all the panelists for taking part in this conversation, and let's keep it going. And certainly from EMA's point of view, we will be doing just that. And we've got a lot to discuss and implement. We're hoping to have a workshop event on the 18th of February. Sorry, Richard, if you don't mind me just quickly just mentioning that. It's still in its early stages of creating this, but hopefully, you know, you all get to join. There will be more information once we work out what it is that we want to do, but we want to be able to have everyone, you know, as many of you as possible, you know, to give your voice, share with us your thoughts. And yeah, that will be on the 18th of February. So watch this space. And that's it from me. Richard, did you have any last thoughts?
I just want to thank you for grasping the nettle within EMA, and Louise sort of, you know, taking co-chairs of the working group, and working, you know, on behalf of the membership and, you know, everybody else to sort of to drive this initiative. To me, it's such an important thing, and I really do want to see us. I think we can do so much, both in our own behaviours, within our companies and within our events, and also and we're in a very privileged place as EMA members, because you are budget holders, so you can drive change through the supply chain. And I think that's a massive thing for us to sort of look at as we go forward, and into education and mentorship, and helping kids from you know, underprivileged backgrounds think about the events industry and how they can get into it through apprenticeship schemes and stuff like that. So I'm very excited about it. It's great to kick it off. Looking forward to the big event on the 18th and the journey en route. So guys, thank you very much. Thanks everybody. Really, really pleased. Look forward to working with you all on all of this and the other stuff that we're working on in this area. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye everyone. Have a good day.